Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar. Today's topic is on Comdata for Stage 100 Contractor and Stage 300 CRE with presenter Jason Haney from Comdata. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone is in listen-only mode, so if you have questions, please type them into the questions box on the screen, and we will address them at the end of the session. This webinar will be recorded, and we will email out a copy to everyone later today. I will now turn it over to you, Jason.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here this morning to introduce you guys to Comdata's virtual card for construction AP and ExpenseTrack. So I always like to, first when I'm running a webinar, is to put a picture up of myself on the screen, so you guys can put a face to the name. I've been with Comdata for 5 years now, almost 5 years. I spent about 4 or so years as a direct sales rep, and I sold about 85% construction. So I've been in the construction vertical, specifically for commercial card, for a while now. So I know the lingo, and I know what CFOs, director of finances, controllers, etc., are doing on a daily basis, and the hardships and problems that they face, and some of the issues that we try and solve with our automation tools. So in about the last 6 months or so, I assumed responsibility for a portion of our strategic partners group. So I reached out to Bob at Accordant earlier this year and asked him if he would be interested in building a partnership together, essentially from the ground up, specifically around our offerings for 300 CRE, 100 Contractor, and soon to be Acumatica construction version. And here we are. So a light agenda review. I'm going to give you kind of a brief overview of who Comdata is, and then we are going to take a high-level view at our 2 primary or flagship offerings. So the virtual card for construction AP, and then the Comdata purchasing card that's paired with our mobile expense management platform called ExpenseTrack. Both of these offerings are tailored and built specifically for the versions of ERP that you guys are running. We have vast experience with these specific ERPs. We have project managers and account managers who are tasked specifically with assisting in implementations and account management for companies and accounts who are running these ERPs. So if you're not familiar with Comdata, the biggest differentiator that I like to point out when I'm introducing a company to us for the first time is that we are not a treasury company. So we are not a bank. We are focused on technology, and we are specifically interested in payment issuance, which means we help companies pay vendors, whether it be via physical plastic programs and or virtual credit card, which is the virtual card for AP that's often integrated into the accounting softwares. We're located in Nashville, Tennessee, about 15 minutes south of the city. I work out of our corporate office, and our parent company is FleetCor, publicly traded out of Atlanta, and they're about a $20 billion market cap company. We do a number of different things. So these 2 flagship product offerings are the heavy focus, and particularly so for the construction vertical because they solve a lot of needs. But we do a number of other things. So I'm going to pass, obviously, this along to Krista, and this is going to come to you guys later today in the form of a PDF. But please, if you have questions or are interested in learning about something else that we do and think it might be a fit for a need that you guys have, obviously bring that to our attention. We'll be happy to connect. Again, to double click on our focus in construction, we are very proud to say that we host almost 50% of all credit card volume that's moving around the US within the construction vertical. That's a pretty telling number, and that is basically the responsibility of two initiatives here at Comdata. So the first initiative is to partner with the accounting softwares themselves. And then the second piece of that is that we partner with companies like Accordant to bring these offerings to their client base. Because it's tried, it's proven, we know it works. We have, now that number is close to 1,500 construction clients, and that's across all of our product sets. So that's not specifically virtual card and purchasing card, although that's the majority. But that's a pretty healthy number, and obviously, it's made up of a mixture of general GCs and then a number of different specialties. Again, we have folks here in-house and sales reps across the U.S. who are specifically focused on construction companies. That's all they do all day long. They don't play in any other arena. And that is nice and comforting for financial leaders and representatives from construction companies when talking to us, because we are just versed in the world. The interesting thing, though, having been a direct sales rep, is that construction companies, I think, are a bit more hesitant to consider moving towards paperless pay than some other industry verticals. And aside from whatever I can tell you from third-party studies, I think I would just offer my own experience from conversations with literally thousands of financial leaders at contractors across the U.S. I think the reality is that, if something's not broke, you don't want to fix it. And paper checks and signing those paper checks and watching them go across the desk has been the tried and proven way for a long time for a lot of contractors. And in my experience, a lot of the guys who are signing the checks going out the door to vendors have been the same guy signing the check for 30, 40, 50 years. So introducing the idea of virtual credit card that's being generated and sent out directly from an accounting software is sometimes creating a sense of hesitancy. So the biggest part of our job and your job, if you have to take this to the rest of the team for consideration, is the education piece, right? It's introducing them to the idea of moving away from physical check and paying somebody with a virtual credit card. Once I think the education piece is tackled, there is tons of value to be had and to be instilled into the organization by implementing these tools, and they come at almost no cost, if any cost at all. And sometimes that's hard to comprehend, but it's the simple reality with our tools here, and that's because Comdata is a payments processing house, which means that we generate our revenue off of the interchange in a credit card transaction, which allows us to offer our platforms without charging fees, which is something that a lot of contractors see if they go to their treasury banks to consider these types of solutions, because those treasury banks are shopping the functionality out, the processing functionality out to third-party providers like Comdata. And this really just speaks to, where this movement, if you will, is headed. Credit card is not going away. It's been on a sharp uptick to the right for many years. Even in the 5 years that I've been in this space, I've seen the level of comfort with these types of offerings grow. And although they've been slower to adopt, I think construction companies on the whole have become more considerate of these types of options and understand that the physical check is going away. And it's important to migrate away from that payment modality on your own terms instead of being forced into finding a solution, because, the banks from which you're issuing checks are starting to charge fees, etc. So let's dive into the AP automation piece of this offering, now that we have a high-level idea of who Comdata is. So we have ERP integrations built for about 15 different accounting softwares. And out of those 15 different accounting softwares, 9 of them are construction specific. We focus in construction because we've found that the conversion rates to credit card spend are higher in construction than they tend to be elsewhere. So to put some dollars around that, for every $1 million worth of AP spend that a specialty contractor may have, I would expect to see a minimum of $300,000 going out via virtual card once this payment modality has been introduced to the landscape. So we see 30% migration of an AP file in construction to credit card from check, ACH, or wire. Outside of the construction industry, the norm is 20 to 30%. So although that may not sound like a massive difference, it aggregates obviously very quickly when you look at annual revenue of a company, the spend, and in digesting the numbers on a 2, 3, 4, or 5-year timeline. To talk specifically about our Sage offerings, we have well over 100 clients running some version of the Sage integrations today across the US, and they range obviously in their specialties and or general contractors. And that is specifically virtual card for AP offerings. So if we were to roll in physical plastic to that number, it's probably close to 200. So again, project managers, the folks here internally who are responsible for lifting these planes off the runway, so to speak, are well versed in your environments and have walked through them time and again. So some folks on the line might not have ever heard of a virtual credit card. So I want to kind of walk through and give an elementary understanding of what a virtual card is. So when a company onboards with Comdata, a part of what we do is look at their AP file together. And we will essentially scrub their vendor list and remove anybody from their list of vendors who they don't want to be contacted about this program. They don't want to be considered to be paid with a virtual card. And we arrive at what we call addressable spend here internally. And a Comdata representative, a specific vendor enrollment caller who's a direct point of contact for the new client, will actually reach out to your vendors on your behalf and ask whether or not you are, or that vendor is willing to accept a virtual card from the new client. And they're going to provide essentially one of 3 answers. It's going to be a yes, we'll accept unconditionally, no, thank you, we don't take credit card, or it's going to be a conditional yes, which means there's some kind of business decision involved with them taking credit card. An example of that would be, yes, we're willing to accept credit card from Jason's construction company, but we're going to charge 2% in order to facilitate that. We pass all of that information back to the new client on a weekly basis as we call through their vendor list. And if it's a yes, that vendor enrollment caller will collect an email address to which payment is to be remitted. So they'll say, okay, that's great. We appreciate you enrolling in the program. What's a good email address that you would like that payment remittance sent out to? And it'll be something along the lines of AR at Jason's supplyhouse.com or accounting at jasonsupplyhouse.com. And immediately after the vendor enrollment caller collects that email address, that vendor to be paid is going to receive a welcome email. And that welcome email is going to be branded with the Comdata clients or the Comdata mutual accordant clients, contact information, names, logos, etc. And included in that email is going to be the first 6 digits of a credit card number. And then subsequently, every time that new client goes to pay that vendor, they're going to receive or send out another email to that email address, and that second email is going to have the remaining credit card information necessary to process a payment. So 2 separate emails, and that payment, when combined and processed, is good for a specific dollar amount one time, typically within 30 or 60 days. So if you look at the security around the modality, it mimics a paper check. High level from a process flow standpoint, and this is essentially true regardless of the ERP that you're running, this is demonstrating how the process flow works. So you're going to approve invoices just as you would today in your existing software. And then essentially what we're going to do is we're going to pull the current payment modality out of the life cycle and input the virtual credit card. So instead of printing checks there in-house or sending positive pay files to your bank, you're going to remit a payment file to Comdata. 30 seconds after that file hits home here, credit card remittances are going to be sent out to your vendors on your behalf. And then as your supplier processes those credit cards, they move through the typical authorization process that any other credit card transaction does. So you see it today in your personal bank accounts. When you swipe your card at Starbucks, it moves from a pending authorized to posted status. Same idea with a virtual credit card for a B2B transaction. As those transactions post, we pass back, Comdata passes back reconciliation files that are built specifically for the ERP for which you are operating to be brought back in-house for reconciliation. So there's some obvious hard and soft cost benefits associated with paying folks with virtual credit card. First and foremost, there's a dollar amount associated with the cost of physical checks going out the door. It's different for every company out there. You know, if you get nothing else out of this presentation, I would ask you to take some time and look at what physical checks are costing your organization. It could be $2, $3, $4, $5. Some folks have even said it's as high as $15 or $20 a physical check when all the fees and man hours are taken into consideration. So anything that we can do to assist you guys in chipping away at that cost is a win in my book, right? But on top of that, there is rebate to be had. So we are a premier issuing Mastercard partner, which means that we offer rebate on every dollar that goes out the door. For a virtual card, these rebates typically start around 1%. Rebate here at Comdata is contingent generally on 2 factors. It's contingent on the dollar amount that is projected to be going out via virtual card, something that we are fairly confidently telling you prior to implementing the program through analyzing your vendor file. And then secondarily, rebate is generally contingent on terms that you may agree to with Comdata. And what I mean by that is how quickly you pay Comdata for whichever credit card transactions have posted during the agreed upon billing cycle. So obviously the quicker you pay Comdata, the more we're able to offer you in rebate. That being said though, some companies and some contractors come to Comdata because they value float over rebate, right? So we may be giving somebody 30-day terms on their virtual card statements with us, but we're charging them some rebate because they'd rather have the float than the cash back every single month. And then at the end of the day, I think remitting virtual card payments is just easier than stuffing and mailing off physical checks and dealing with stop check fees and lost checks and return mailers, etc. It's cleaner, it's quicker. You can administrate these offerings on the fly. So if you send somebody the wrong dollar amount or forgot to add a discount, etc., you can go in there and change the dollars to be paid in real time, and these guys are then processing those card payments, 20 seconds after you make the change on the phone with you. So it affords the payer, so you as the Comdata client, flexibility in an environment that previously, once you sent checks off or once you sent a positive pay file to the bank, there wasn't really a lot of control and visibility into what was going on, and virtual card changes that. So it's very hard to do what we call here the Comdata premium justice in a couple of slides, because I think that, you know, we truly are probably the leading provider of this type of functionality, you know, not only specifically in the construction space, but industry-wide. I think, you know, we just have the platform here to support these programs like no other competitor does. And the driving force behind that is that this is all we do. So we are not after treasury components of a company's functionality. We are focused solely on physical and virtual Mastercard. So we work hard to make sure that we're moving as much volume through these programs as possible, because that's more revenue for you as the client in form of rebate and hard and soft cost savings, and transparently more revenue obviously for Comdata as well, because the more money that we're able to move through that program for you, speaking specifically for the virtual plastic, you know, the better it is for everybody involved. And we get there a couple of different ways. But a big piece of that is to make sure that we're giving you 1.5, 2x, and sometimes even 3x multiplier on what you may see with a competitor offering a virtual card for AP offering that you may find at your treasury bank or some other competitors across the US. And then another big piece of this is that when you're a virtual card client of Comdata's, you're never going to have to call into a general customer service number, which is, you know, something I don't want to do in my personal life and something I don't want to do in my business life as well. So the sales rep is one of 8 direct points of contact that a virtual card client is assigned to when they're here at Comdata. So you're never alone in introducing these functionalities to your operation. We're here to assist you in getting you to that 2x or 3x multiplier when you're trying to learn the ropes, so to speak, of building a virtual card for AP program, because it does take some buy-in on your end as well. But we have best practices and you know, stories that are shared with you guys as we go that will help you get to those multipliers. To double click on our vendor enrollment options, this is kind of our secret sauce slide for the virtual card for AP program. And I want to walk you through the different modalities of payment. So keep in mind that no matter how you're paying a vendor with Comdata, it's leaving your environment the same way. So it makes no difference to you how that vendor is going to receive payment. The primary method of delivery for payment, obviously, and the preferred, is Mastercard. So these guys are willing to accept Mastercard, and they're willing to accept it via email address, right? So that is the primary modality of virtual card payment, competitive landscape wide. So the majority of folks out there on the market who are assisting companies in paying vendor invoices via virtual card are delivering virtual card to email address. But what Comdata has done, and frankly, I think is a massive reason why you would want to choose us as provider versus somebody else, is we recognize that there is a number of vendors out there, and specifically within the construction space, this is a big deal, that are willing to accept credit card, but they are not going to accept credit card via email address. So a good example of that, that you're likely paying in the real world and or business world is like a Verizon Wireless or an AT&T. So you or I can go on and pay our business or personal phone bill with a credit card, but you cannot email them credit card information to an email address and have them process it for you on your behalf. So what Comdata has done is we've recognized that there's a plethora of those guys out there in the ether to be paid. And we've built a team here that we call Pay For You. And essentially that is 65, almost 70 people now that sit on the floor below me here in Nashville that call out to your vendors all day long, and they're calling into phone IVR payment worlds, or they're logging into online portals on our client's behalf and paying these bills. So you guys don't have to do that. We take the manual work associated with paying those utility bills or those national rental house utility or rental bills off of your plate, and we'll do it for you. That team right now, just to give you some scope, is processing about $130 million a month in payments for our clients across the U.S. So this is a very big deal. And specifically in construction, it is a make or break offering when looking at implementing virtual card programs. And I mean that because of two reasons. Number one, there's that rebate to be captured that you may not see when you consider somebody else. And then number two, nobody likes logging into Waste Management or Verizon or NES to pay credit card bills. And you should never be allowing vendors to keep card information on file or keeping credit card numbers on file in an online portal with a vendor. It's just not best practice. And this program alleviates all of that for you, and we do that at no cost. So that's a very big deal. And then we introduced what we call Comdata Direct, which is essentially kind of like if an all else fails option. So I have clients, and Comdata has clients who have taken implementing AP automation to the extreme. And as part of the campaigning process that we talked about earlier, they will literally say to their vendors that if you are unwilling to accept payment from us electronically, we are no longer going to be doing business with you. And our preferred method of payment is Mastercard. Will you accept Mastercard? And if they say no, then the rebuttal to that is, okay, well, we have a second option for you because you don't accept Mastercard. We are going to ask that you take a payment method called Comdata Direct, which is essentially a push ACH type design that comes directly from your accounting software along with all the other virtual cards you may have sent out, but it's hitting the vendor's bank account more so like an ACH does at a smaller fee. So the fee for accepting Comdata Direct is somewhere between 1.1 and 1.6%, which is about half or a little bit more than half the cost of accepting Mastercard. So it's cheaper for them to accept, but it's a way of our clients being able to really inch the needle towards 100% paperless pay. And it's a tool to be used at our client's discretion. And it's there, when you guys are comfortable enough to start putting a bit of heat on the vendors that you want to put heat on. And then last but not least, we have a very close partnership and a long working relationship with a company called Infintech out of Ohio. They are a payment acceptance facilitation house, which basically means that they help companies accept credit cards. So if we call out to one of a new client's vendors and say, hey, would you accept credit card? And they say yes, but we currently don't have a way of doing it, or we do accept, but we've been looking to lower our fees. We can help them with that on the fly by setting them up for a conversation with Infintech. And Infintech historically has saved anybody that they talk to about 50% of cost of acceptance on an annual basis. So That's an exciting tool to have in the arsenal when reaching out to vendors to sequester this information. So that's virtual card in a nutshell. There's more to be had on that subject and more to be learned and talked about, but I wanted to do my best to get you guys, enough high-level information today that you can arm yourself with good questions to ask to the Comdata sales rep if you guys are interested in continuing the conversation and learning more about what this program has to offer. And at the very least, speaking specifically to virtual card, we have the ability to tell you who you're paying today, who is already accepting credit card from existing Comdata construction companies. And I want to say that again. We can tell you today who you're paying, who would immediately start accepting credit card from you if you were to implement virtual card. So that gives you a real world idea of the value to be had, speaking specifically to the rebate potential of this program. So I would ask that everyone on the line at the very least have that conversation with Comdata so you can get an idea as to what kind of value this program can bring to the organization, and make your decision on whether or not to continue conversation with us around those numbers, because that's the only way to truly make an informed decision on consideration of a virtual card program like this. So to move on to the second piece of our offering, this is exciting for me because in the last year or so, I've heavily relied on and used our ExpenseTrack program and platform because that's how we reconcile transactions here internally. It's a great offering and it's very easy to use. And it was my first experience with an expense management platform, so I had to learn it from the ground up, and so far I've been pleased with it. So one important note that our physical plastic card and ExpenseTrack program have to be utilized together. So you can implement a physical plastic card with Comdata, but if you want to utilize the ExpenseTrack offering, you have to use Comdata's physical plastic. We are connected to ExpenseTrack via Mastercard feed, so all the data is flowing to and from behind the scenes. So I'd just like to throw that out there for as a disclaimer ahead of time. But what's unique about our physical plastic program, and it should really be considered and looked at regardless of whether or not you need the mobile expense management piece of the equation, is that because we're a payments processing house, have the ability to build what we call spending profiles here internally. So we're very good at helping contractors consolidate card programs down into one vendor relationship and one invoice to be paid. So I can almost bet that some of you on the line probably have an Amex program, you have a WEX card, you have a Home Depot card, a Lowe's card, and perhaps some kind of large national supply house purchasing account that you get some kind of terms on. So what Comdata tries to do is instead of you guys having to admin 4 or 5 programs and your cardholders having to carry 4 or 5 physical cards in the field, we want to help you bring that down into one program, one invoice, and one card. And we do that by controlling how, when, and where cards are authorized at point of sale. So we have the ability to give you we'll just call it $1 million credit limit. And within that $1 million credit limit, you have 10 subgroups. And the first subgroup may be your purchasing manager and the CEO. And these guys have no limits on their card. If you have $1 million credit limit, you can go out and swipe for $1 million and it's going to approve. But profile 2, you may give to a temp who is buying coffee for whoever, right? And they're limited to $5 a day. And then profile 3 is a fuel only card, and it could even be, as specific as a vehicle card, capturing mileage, employee number, etc. And all of those are reported on separately, but roll up into one single dollar amount due at the end of the billing cycle or at the end of the term. And that is a lifesaver and has been a lifesaver, for the people who are adminning these programs on a day-to-day basis. all of this control functionality is editable and changeable in real time. So if you have a project manager who has $1,000 a day limit out across the country and he needs to make a $800,000 purchase, you can hop into ICD, click a button, override all of his lockdowns in real time while you're on the phone with him. He can swipe the card and be approved for that transaction outside of his restraints, and immediately reverts back to the purchasing card profile restraints that you had him designed for originally. So it's great for on-the-fly admin. ExpenseTrack has been around for a while now, so it's probably about 2 years old, and it was born out of a previous mobile expense management platform that we built specifically for construction called CIMS, Construction Expense Management Software. Not the most flashy name in the world, but it worked. ExpenseTrack is essentially a much prettier version, and what's unique about ExpenseTrack for the specific ERPs we're talking about today is we drop what we call a sync tool into your environment, and we pull over cost allocation structures, allowing your cardholders to code expenses in the field on their app while they're also capturing receipt. We then pass all that information back in-house for approval and then back into the ERP for reconciliation. So on a daily basis or twice a day, whatever the feed needs to be, we're pulling over GL, cost type, et cetera, and allowing these guys to pull the specific allocations down from drop-down menus accordingly. And as you guys add new allocations into Sage, those are going to be relayed to ExpenseTrack. So aside from the initial upload and the initial creation, right, of the platform, you don't have to add jobs into environments. It's doing the work for you, which is great. So I don't want to get too specific into the functionality of the ExpenseTrack program, but because we're a technology firm here and because we're a processing house, we have the ability to truly build these platforms to your liking and your specifications. Every implementation here is as different as we need it to be. We're very nimble in lifting accounts and programs off of the runway. And I love that because it allows us to solve specific needs for new clients. And the reality is virtual card for AP programs and physical plastic programs are not one size fits all. And you know, I think we've answered that concern very well here at Comdata. And our project managers and our account managers and our project coordinators, the folks who are responsible for assisting you guys in lifting these planes off the runway, understand that very well, and are well versed in walking through, you know, varying and different implementations time and time again. So it's not anything that we're not accustomed to, which is you know, hopefully comforting for people who are you know, considering coming to Comdata and building a program like this for the first time. So these are some screenshots of the offering. It's since actually received an update about 2 or 3 weeks ago, so it looks even better and even prettier than this. I use it often, at least weekly, and you know, coming from someone who had never used a mobile expense management platform before, I found it easy and intuitive. There's not, you know, a lot to it from the cardholder's perspective, so it's not a total pain to roll out and train cardholders and folks who are going to be coding expenses on the offering. I'm going to run through these last two slides because I want to give a chance to answer questions if there are any. Again, to reiterate, lots of direct points of contacts to be assigned out here at Comdata. So we by no means are going to onboard you guys and throw you to the wolves, so to speak. There's a hands-on and almost a babying mentality when it comes to onboarding new clients. Essentially, you guys are going to have to tell us to go away and that you're comfortable enough for us to let go. And we've built that mindset through years of onboarding construction companies specifically, and it just behooves everybody involved for us to stay in touch and at your beck and call until you tell us that it's time to go. So Krista, that's all I have from a collateral review perspective. Are there any questions out there?
No questions right now. If you do have a question, type that into the box and we'll be happy to answer it for you.
So while they are, typing out any questions, if there are any questions, we're obviously happy to talk more specifics around these offerings and build proposals and rebate offerings specifically for your companies. It's my hope at the very least that you guys would consider on the line running what we call a vendor match, and that's where we look at your AP spend and give you an idea of who could be paid with virtual cards today that's currently being paid via check, check or ACH, giving you, accurate insight into the potential return that these programs could yield.
Still no questions, so I think everyone's okay.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate everybody's time today. At the very least, I'm glad to have introduced Comdata to a certain extent to you guys. And Krista, I'm going to ask that you pass along all of my direct contact info with whichever collateral is to be sent out. And I'm happy to field any additional questions and hope that you'll consider, future in additional conversation with Comdata.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks.